Several meetings now, we've updated you on our progress around 8th grade algebra. So we'd like to give you an update on where we are and what we've learned since our last meeting and where we're headed. The timeline at the top, the part that is not bolded, we've already done, and we've shared that part of the timeline with the board already. And then we have some things that I wanted to point out in terms of like what's happening now and where we're headed from here. You'll see our final program recommendation is going to be to you here tonight, and we'll explain why. We'll share some data that we have. The Algebra Regents exam is actually on the 16th, and that evening we plan to have a webinar for parents, like describing the choices and going over, how that selection is going to be made. We'll open up the question and answer feature so we can field questions that parents may have. Teacher recommendations are going to go to parents by the 20th. So 6/20, parents will have their teacher recommendations. The 22nd is a board meeting. We're hoping that we can come back and just share some Algebra Regions results to give you an update on this year's students. And then our last day for faculty is 6/24. And I note that just because I know our parents will want a little bit of time between when the recommendation is given and if they want to ask our faculty some questions, they'll have some time to do that before the faculty leaves for the summer. So that's our anticipated timeline as we go forward. The next few slides are slides that are repeats from last time, but I just wanted to ground our thinking from last time because I know there's some time and space between that presentation and this one. So the idea was to continue to focus on algebra, to explore the opportunity of potentially offering an extended algebra, an algebra 8, and an enriched algebra, place all of our students in algebra 8, and then have parents and students be able to opt into either enriched or extended as they see fit, and then to make recommendations from teachers for the enriched class based on the students that we think are the best fit for enriched class. And then co-teaching support you see for special education students that have that on their CSE would be in the Algebra 8 class. So our course options, I won't go through these. I think the board understands the choices and the community does. We've got extended algebra as a potential option, Algebra 8, enriched algebra. We went through those at the last meeting. And then we do, oops, sorry, I went too far there. We do this again is a same slide as last time. We do have some strengths listed on the left side and then some questions that remain, but we do have some more clarity because we've collected some data between the last meeting and this one as we've surveyed parents with regard to what they believe their choice would be. So let me share some of that data. We did send a letter with a link to a survey that asked parents based on the information you have so far, and we didn't make teacher recommendations yet, but based on the information you have about your child and based on the information that we've shared about these potential course options, where do you think is the best fit for your child? And you can see how the results hash out there by school with Bell and Seven Bridges. You can also see the percents, and I just put a little like a graphic pictorial there on the right so you get a of how our students are distributing. It is of concern that 58% of our students would kind of lean towards enriched, and then 42% would be like the total of 42 opted for the extended algebra and the Algebra 8. Normally we'd see a little bit more of a, like a bell curve there, but we see obviously that we're leaning more towards the enriched, which the good part of that is students are looking for that challenge. But the question is that the appropriate place for all of our students? So this next graph is a graph where we compared the parents' choice with MAPS scores. So we took our NWEA scores, plotted them across the bottom in like score bands, and then we compared those to the parent choice. So you can see that 11 parents that had students that scored, if I go all the way to the right of the graph, 261 to 275, so very high achieving students in math, all of those students did enriched algebra. So that makes a lot of sense. And then as you go to the left, you see the next like most rigorous band there, and you see the majority of those students selected enriched algebra. And you can see how that those yellow bars kind of tail off as you go to the left side. And then you see the red, as you'd expect, this kind of bell-shaped curve, kind of more in the middle for the red-shaped bars. It is of concern for me that we have the blue bars almost all the way across, that you can see the national mean there sits at 226 or 227 if you were to round it. But still, although we have students that potentially scored well above or did score well above that national norm, it still seems that parents may prefer that extended algebra option. So I'm not sure if that's, if we just might have to do some coaching around what might be the best fit in those cases. But if we do that coaching, then I would expect that extended algebra number to drop even further, because I don't think that's the right fit for those small bars that are more towards the right there. And that might just be a misunderstanding around like the names of the courses and things like that. So we can work through that. We took the same graph and just drew a little bit of a curve so you could get a sense of how the students would distribute across the courses. So this was actual data that we collected from parents. We didn't have all the parents respond, but based on the actual data, this is kind of the distribution.
So here we started to take the proportion of families that responded to extrapolate out to see what our sectioning would begin to look like. Here we have the proportion of students and the parents that responded for each of the schools. And if we just did a straight proportion, the numbers of parents that would respond. And something to note, so the extended algebra, if we use the proportion, we would have one section at Bell, but because it's under 10 at Seven Bridges, we wouldn't have a section there. For Algebra 8, we would have two sections at Bell, and then at Seven Bridges, if we had the 42 students and moved the 9 into the Algebra 8, there would be 3 sections of Algebra 8, and then for enriched algebra, the 78 would be 4 sections, and at Seven Bridges, we would have 3 sections. And here, so in our email, we had said that if there are families that didn't want to, that wanted Algebra 8, they didn't have to respond. So we said, let's assume that all the families that didn't respond wanted Algebra 8. And so this would be here.
That slide is not the right slide
that we have here.
That's okay. We'll circle back to that one.
Okay. So, and here we just showed what the proportion would look like of responses had we proportioned out what students would be in each class, whether the extended, the Algebra 8 or the enriched algebra, or if we said that all the families that didn't respond are going to go into Algebra 8. And you could see how that percentage in enriched algebra drops. So what Adam had showed before, we had a high percentage of families who in enriched algebra, it's possible that lots of those parents that want to be in Algebra 8 just didn't respond to the survey. So we think that we predict that our real data will be somewhere between these two.
Yeah, can I say that a different way to look at this? It's just said a different way is if the parents didn't respond because they assume their students, like we said in the letter, would just be put in Algebra 8, then we're looking at the red bar distribution. If we take the survey data and we just like proportionally expand it, assuming like, it's about half of the parents responded, so we can double each of the responses to see, then we're looking at the blue, which is kind of skewed to the right. So that's where Josh was saying we'll probably be somewhere in the middle. Probably some parents just missed the survey and other parents just assumed, I assume my child's going to go to Algebra 8. So, but we have enough flexibility in the sections that we can shift sections based on where we need the sections to be, and it's very reasonable class sizes across the board for these classes.
So again, I want to talk about the 8th grade to 9th grade transition. So the piece of this is the slide that we showed last time that I want to make sure that I emphasize is that students that take extended algebra in year 1 will go into extended algebra year 2 in 9th grade. Students that take algebra 8 in 8th grade, if they are successful, they can generally take geometry or geometry enriched as 9th graders. If they find that they need more support in algebra, they still have that option to take extended algebra year 2 in 9th grade. So the students in extended algebra year 1 are going to be moved into extended algebra year 2. But if you're in algebra 8, you have some more flexibility and some options. And we also discussed that algebra 8 is where our co-taught classes are going to be. So the support looks different, but that Algebra 8 class really can support all of our students and give them the most flexibility into their high school transition. On our algebra website, we had post the last board meeting, we had 63 comments. Adam and I had read through them, and we started to code some of the data. 53 of those comments expressed support for a tiered algebra model. 23 of them expressed that they would like additional AIS and extra help support in our middle schools. And 2 of them expressed support for going to a Math 8 and an enriched algebra model. So there were some questions in there that we had responded to, and there were some comments, but this is the primary crux of the data that we found that we were able to code through there. And so our recommendation at this time is that all students experience an algebra-focused course. We think that's very important for students to see algebra in 8th grade and prepare them for their 9th grade. We have a 3-course model, an extended algebra, an algebra 8, and an enriched algebra model. We're going to look at teachers are going to recommend students either to enriched algebra based on their multiple measures or algebra 8, but they're not going to make recommendations into the extended algebra course, and all courses will be open for all students to opt into.
All right, so we're going to wrap up just with a reminder that we've been updating our algebra website regularly with information, important calendar dates. We'll update it with this information as well with the slide deck from the presentation. And then there's a survey link there on the bottom. That survey link remains open. So if anybody would like to provide feedback on the model or has questions, they can certainly visit our algebra page. We've sent the link out to the community and enter information into the survey. And we do read it. We read every response that's in there, and then we, it helps us guide decisions as we move forward. And this is where we started, just the timeline as a refresher. Save the date, parent webinar 6/16, 7 o'clock. We'll make sure we send that out within a day or two to our community.